I f***ing love Bob Dylan. There have been various important artists in my life, artists that I've been really inspired by, artists that I've looked up to, artists that I've tried to model my entire personality off of, and one of the most prominent for me of the last several years has been none other than Bob Dylan. And I just had the privilege of seeing Bob Dylan at 85 years old, I think, in concert. And in preparation to that, I listened to all 40 Bob Dylan studio albums for 40 days straight, one a day in reverse chronological order. I had heard most of them before, but I think there was maybe about 10 that I had never gotten around to listening to. So did this 40-day marathon, listened to every Dylan album, and I did that for a few reasons. One, to build momentum for the concert, make it kind of an event with the concert as the big final number after this long 40-day journey. Secondly, to become a real fan and finally have listened to every single studio album. And third, because I knew that when Bob Dylan does a concert, he is not just going to play the greatest hits album of his early discography with a few little newer things sprinkled in there. No, I knew that a Bob Dylan set list is the wild, wild west. Anything goes. And sometimes you might get a night where you get some of those classic 60s songs like a Rolling Stone, Girl from the North Country Fair, Blowin' in the Wind, etc. But then you might get a set list that is way more niche, just kind of the albums that maybe aren't as popular. And I wanted to make sure I knew all of those songs so that I could recognize what he was doing. And I wanted to grow an attachment to some of those songs so that if he played something that maybe was a little more niche, I could potentially still be really excited because I've grown to love this song. I am a firm believer that while, yes, Dylan's peak era in the 1960s is amazing, and there are countless amazing songs from that period, I think Dylan has continued to make wonderful songs and wonderful albums into the 70s, into the 80s, into the 90s, and even into the 2000s to the 2020s. Now, historically, in my life, I've liked Bob Dylan for a number of reasons. For one, he's fucking hilarious.
You know who?
Yeah, I know who, you know.
Alright. Hey, I don't care who did it. If you know who did it, you just better tell whoever did it to get out there and tell the cats that come up here to ask who did it, tell them who it was. I'm not taking no fucking responsibility for cats I don't know, man.
And then I think for me as an artist, there's two things that I really resonate with that Dylan has been able to do in his career. One of those is he has continued to make great songs with not the best voice. Now, don't get me wrong, I love the sound of Dylan's voice, but come on, it's not like he has the voice of Adele or Paul McCartney or Greg Heffley when he was auditioning for the School Musical.
And I need you more than ever. And if you
But then, maybe even more so, I'm really inspired by how much Dylan has been able to evolve over the years. I've always kind of been an artist and a person who has found it hard to stick to one thing. I always want to explore new territory and explore new sounds, styles, whatever. And there's obviously the famous Dylan going electric, changing from folk music to rock music. But the story doesn't stop there. Shortly after he went electric, he went country. But then he kind of went back to the folk rock sound and expanded upon it, expanded what the possibilities of that sound could be. And, later on in his career, he had a, jazz crooner phase. Not enough people know this. He has a rap verse. He has a rap feature on, I want to say, Curtis Blow album?
I've indulged in high knowledge to scan of encyclopedia, keeping constant research of our reports and news media. Kids starve in Ethiopia, and we are getting greedier. The rich are getting richer, and the needy's getting needier.
He just did whatever he wanted. He continued to evolve and change, and I love that. And as someone who has been doing that in music, I started with rap music as a dumb teenager. Since then, I've done more like hyperpop stuff. I've done rock stuff. I've dabbled in country. I've dabbled in folk, singer-songwriter. I love expanding new territory. And one other thing that Dylan and I both have explored is gospel. So for those of you that don't know me, hi, I'm Jake, filmmaker, musician. I recently deconverted from Christianity. My last album was largely about that process of losing my faith, and the last few videos I've put out on my channel have kind of been about me navigating life on the other side, I guess. I got into Bob Dylan my freshman year of college, and There are many reasons why I became hooked on his music and hooked on him as an artist, but definitely one of the big undeniable ones was that I was aware that he had a Christian phase. A lot of people talk down on not all of his Born Again output, but definitely those 3 albums that he put out that are very explicitly Christian are not among the usual fan favorites. I can definitely see why in a lot of ways. I think that some of the more energetic electric songs of that era, those ones aren't necessarily my favorite, but a lot of the ballads and the more tame, groovy songs of that era really mean a lot to me. And Dylan as an artist who not only was able to change so much in his career, but also as an artist who was able to convert. I think the way that he has incorporated faith, the Bible, religion, and all of that into his music has been deeply inspiring for me, was deeply encouraging to me as a Christian, and now that I'm on the other side, it's comforting in a way still. I was never a huge Christian music fan. I was always pretty openly critical about Christian music and how easy a lot of it felt. But, you know, I found myself in the last few months, a Christian song might come up on my phone and I'll skip it a lot of the time because it's not for me anymore. But I don't feel that way about the Christian Dylan songs that I love. I still really resonate with those songs. And I think maybe part of it is because it was maybe just a phase. Now, if you would have told me Bob Dylan's Christian era was just a phase back when I was a Christian, I would have very strongly been like, it was not a phase, he is still Christian, and he has been Christian ever since, he just became more subtle with it in the writing. And I think that's true to an extent. There is no shortage of religious lyrics, of biblical references in his music after the early 1980s. That went on through the 80s, through the 90s, to today. Honestly, maybe even more so today. Rough and Rowdy Ways is super biblical, super religious, super spiritual. So don't get me wrong, I know that Dylan's spirituality has stayed with him. But I think as a Christian, I really wanted Bob to be more devout than he was. And I really wanted him to be proof that you could be an artist of that magnitude and of that level of greatness and still be a devout follower of Jesus. You shouldn't claim to know what's going on in someone's life. Who knows what goes on in Bob Dylan's head? But I think just like the way the folk purists of the early 1960s wanted Bob to be something he just wasn't anymore, a socially aware folk music hero.
He's changed from what he was. He's not the same as what he was at first.
You don't even recognize him.
No.
About a year ago, I saw him here in Sheffield at the City Hall and I thought he was magnificent. And, I thought he just couldn't improve if he tried. Then the next thing that happened was he went really commercial with this backing group, and I didn't like that very much. I don't know what he's trying to do. I think he's conceding to to some sort of popular taste. I think it's a bad thing. I think he's prostituting himself.
In the same way that those folk purists of the 1960s wanted Dylan to be that image, remain as that person that they knew him as, I think I desperately tried to cling on to the idea that Bob Dylan continued to be this incredibly devout, born-again Christian that he was in the late 70s and early 80s. After doing a little bit of research and finally maybe allowing myself to be more honest with the situation, he just wasn't. Now, that's not to put down what faith he might have had. Again, I don't want to pretend like I know what's in his head. For all I know, maybe he has had, an unshaken belief in God. But Bob Dylan was not a good person. I knew about Bob Dylan's second wife, and I knew that it was kind of a secret. I didn't know this for a fact, but I had picked up that his second wife was one of his gospel backup singers. And because of that, I thought, oh, he found this good Christian girl, they settled down. Unfortunately, one thing led to another and they got divorced, but see, he was married to this Christian woman, and that proves that, you know, he was Christian throughout all of the 80s, and they were living a good, godly marriage together. No. Bob only married her because he got her pregnant, and he continued to cheat on her, just like he did with his first wife, and just like he did with all of his famous girlfriends of the 60s. He continued to cheat on her over and over and over again. I didn't know all about that as a Christian, but I think maybe there was a sense in which I purposefully, at least subconsciously, tuned that out. Because I wanted to make my own image of who this person was. And the ultimate lesson of Bob Dylan is that you can't do that. So going back to me, if I listen to a song like What Can I Do For You? Or Gotta Serve Somebody, I still find myself really being able to enjoy it. And I think part of that is because I do genuinely think that they're great songs, well-written songs, well-performed songs. But I wonder if there's a little part of that where I allow myself to like it a little more than other types of Christian music, because just like my Christian music that I used to make, I know it came from a phase and not the start of the rest of someone's life. And celebrities are so fucking weird. It's really kind of a form of like idolatry. I do try really actively to not care about celebrities or not like put these Hollywood people on a pedestal. I try not to look at them as like greater than anyone else. What makes you great is not that you're famous or have accolades or money or whatever. If I have a lot of like respect for a celebrity, it's pretty much always because I love their art and I respect their craft and I'm inspired by their dedication or their style. But I do think I fall into traps with people sometimes, where it's like you develop a weird like parasocial relationship with them. You look to them as like heroes. But these people aren't heroes. Bob Dylan is an amazing songwriter who I'm happy to be inspired by. But Bob Dylan is not a hero. He's a guy. I truly believe that Bob Dylan is just boomer Kanye. I mean, think about it. It's these two artists from different generations that started out making very socially conscious, traditional type music in their respective field. And then over time, they got a little more experimental or a little more poppy, and some people really liked it, but some people really hated it. I mean, I think the reaction to 808s and Heartbreak or Yeezus is very similar to the reaction to Dylan going electric with Bringing It All Back Home and Highway 61 and playing Maggie's Farm at the Newport Folk Festival. They continue to make really great and ambitious albums. All of that eventually leads to them playing around with some gospel sounds. And then they have a super zealous Christian phase that lasts 3 albums. The first one being the most theological, the second one maybe being a little more personal, and the third one being kind of a weird blend of a lot of different things that maybe don't quite go together. Then they both have a bit of an infatuation with Judaism, both in very different ways for the two of them. But then their next album is somewhat fueled by that. It's weird, the parallels there have always been really interesting to me, and it's been interesting to see it continue to evolve. And there's more parallels that I didn't even talk about. But I think similarly to watching Kanye through his Christian phase, or watching Bieber or Chance the Rapper or any of these people, it's like, as a Christian living more of a normal life, but who's still like an artist and really looks up to these people as artists, it bleeds into looking up to them as people and really wanting them to be like these great examples of the faith that you care so much about. Whatever, like all these kind of Christian celebrities, they're just people, and they're not ever going to be a better Christian than you. And they're pretty likely going to be a worse one because they have way more temptation than you. And way more reason to have an ego, way more reason to be selfish. So all that leads me to the Bob Dylan concert. I had listened to all 40 albums. I was so excited to go. I had a list of 17 songs that if he played any of them, I was gonna freak out. Because like I said earlier, he doesn't really do hits. You can never count on a song being played. But I was like, if he just does one of these songs that I have written down, I will just be jumping with excitement. And he did none of them. I would say about 70% of the set list was from his 2020 album Rough and Rowdy Ways, which I think is a great album. I think he did maybe 2 or 3 songs that came out before 1980, and the only like classic that he did was a really cool funky arrangement of It Ain't Me Babe, which was actually awesome. But there was a moment that happened at the show that I'm gonna remember forever. He did his song Trying to Get to Heaven, which is from his 1997 album, Time Out of Mind, which if you haven't listened to is so good. But Trying to Get to Heaven is a beautiful song, and it's not from the Christian trilogy. To me, it feels more of like a retrospective on it. He's grappling with the fact that he's not as zealous. He's not as devout as he used to be. He says your memory doesn't haunt him the same anymore. It was just so relatable and beautiful. Because Trying to Get to Heaven isn't a worship song. It isn't a song of salvation. It's a song of unsureness. And it's a song of hope, but a little bit of desperation too, and a little bit of fear. And after doing Trying to Get to Heaven, he went into False Prophet, which is a 2020 song from Rough and Rowdy Ways, which is one of my favorites from that album. And it was so cool, you know, it went from this like beautiful ballad to this more like groovy, kind of like down in the dirt rock song. It was one of the most energetic moments of the night, going from I'm just trying to get to heaven before they close the door to I ain't no false prophet, I just know what I know. A lot of the songs he did that night did have a bit of a religious flair. He ended with Every Grain of Sand, which is a song from Shot of Love, the last of the Christian Born Again trilogy. And either way, I think it's really commendable and really beautiful that of all the songs he could have picked, all of them, many of them newer songs, having some theme of grappling with spirituality, it goes back to the thing I love most about Bob Dylan is he doesn't stay the same. He's always evolving. I don't say that to glaze Bob Dylan. Like, all hail Bob, all hail the genius who continues to, you know, change his styles and change his viewpoints. It's not about that. I just think it's commendable as a human, and it's relatable to me, because I'm agnostic, and agnostic is kind of a gray area. It's maybe in between the spectrum of like full-blown atheist and Christian. I will admit that I lean much closer to the full-blown atheist side these days than the Christian or deistic side, but I don't want to stay the same my whole life. I do always want to be open, and I want to be grappling with these things, and I always want to be humble enough to allow myself to think about the world in different ways. And seeing this old man in his 80s, who I respect so much as an artist, sing these songs, grappling with the fear of the afterlife, and grappling with his past days as a more devoutly spiritual person. That was more convincing than any bullshit apologetic argument that I've heard in a long time. That's not to say that I'm going to start going to church again or, you know, rededicate my life to Christianity. But it's just a good reminder to have respect for the person that you used to be and not completely dismiss that person. I almost cried watching him from the crowd. And again, it's not because he's a celebrity. Like, I was talking about like these elements of idolatry that I think can come up in me. I never would have admitted that they were idolatry, by the way, as a Christian. I always was like, no, it's not idolatry, no, suppress. I think there definitely were elements of that. It's not about him being a hero. It's about beautiful music and the story of a very talented and exceptional artist that I resonate with. It's just a human thing. And it's a respect for music that I love and a story that I resonate with of someone who had a part of his life that was devoutly fueled by religion and spirituality, but has had things change a bit and continues to grow and think about those things and continues to sing about it and make art about it and remember art that he has made about it and perform it for an audience. That was about 20 minutes into the show. It never really topped that, unfortunately. I will be honest that the show kind of started to drag a bit towards the end. It was very mellow. He also was wearing a hoodie the whole time, and the cameras were off. I genuinely see going to a Bob Dylan concert as equivalent to like seeing Mozart perform live. And I really tried to be in the moment there, but him wearing like a hood and having the cameras off and the lights super low definitely made that a little hard for me to do. But regardless, that moment from having a lot of fun with his kind of funky arrangement of It Ain't Me Babe to the beautiful rendition of Trying to Get to Heaven to the chilling performance of False Prophet was really meaningful to me. That was all I could have hoped for. He didn't need to sing another classic song. As much as I would have loved to hear some of those tracks that I love so much, I got what I came for, which was a really profound, damn near spiritual experience watching another human just try to figure it out and make art about it. I don't know if I'm ever going to see Bob Dylan live again. I'm very happy that I can say that I've been able to now. He didn't play all the songs that I wanted him to play, but the songs he did perform now have memories attached to them. And whether it be Trying to Get to Heaven and False Prophet and It Ain't Me Babe, which are songs I already loved, or Every Grain of Sand, Goodbye Jimmy Reed, which I've never really thought about. I have memories with those songs now. And now I think I'll appreciate Rough and Rowdy Ways, his last album, even more, because that'll be the album that I saw Dylan perform live. Although I will admit that I was really, really hoping for I Contain Multitudes. That's like my favorite song on that album, and he didn't do it. And that kind of hurt. I will not lie. But it's okay. It's okay. False Prophet is my second favorite, so we got that one in. Bob Dylan's the f***ing GOAT. What can I say? Back there is a book of every single Bob Dylan song, just the lyrics. I was reading through a little bit of it last night. Time Out of Mind, the writing on that album is just phenomenal. Songwriters like this don't come every day. And I'm not trying to glaze, okay? It's not about glazing. It's about respecting good art and reflecting on art that has meant a lot to me. That is what it's about. And it continues to mean a lot to me, and it will continue to mean a lot to me. Anyway, I'm gonna shut the hell up, and I'm gonna go rank every single Bob Dylan album. That video is going to be linked in the description. If you're a Bob Dylan fan, definitely check out that video. There's some takes that I got in there that are sure to piss you off. I had a almost spiritual experience at the Bob Dylan concert. I almost gave my life to Bob Dylan at the Jesus Christ concert. My name is Jake. Like I said, I make music. If you want to check out my last album, There's Somewhere I Do, that talks about my deconversion process and all the pain and love that went through that. You can go check it out. It's called There's Somewhere I Do on all streaming platforms. Jake Sandvik. New music coming soon-ish. Go listen to Bob Dylan. And if you take one thing from this video, just continue to allow yourself to change. When I'm 80 years old, I don't know if I necessarily want to be like Bob Dylan, but I do want to be like him in the sense that I'm not the exact same person I was when I was 20 or 30. Because life is too big to just be the same person your whole life.